Imagine Abram, a nomadic shepherd, standing alone under the vast sky of the Middle East. The stars shine above him, countless, a silent testimony to the immensity of God's creation. In this moment, God speaks to Abram, making a covenant that will change the course of history. Genesis 15 is a story of faith and divine promise, a promise of descendants as numerous as the stars and a land for his people. Yet it is also a story of doubt, struggle, and the testing of faith. As we delve into this ancient account, we will explore what this covenant meant to Abram and what it means for us today. At the end of this video, we have a special message for our day. Abraham, still without an heir, questions God's promise. Faced with his doubts, God invites him to gaze at the vastness of the starry sky. Shall we count the stars? God asks, so shall your descendants be. A bold promise that defies human logic and tests Abraham's faith. Prepare to witness the birth of a covenant that would shape the history, faith, and hope of millions. In Genesis 15, we encounter a profound moment in the biblical narrative, God's covenant with Abram. Despite his advanced age and childlessness, God promises Abram descendants as numerous as the stars. This covenant marks a pivotal point where faith meets divine assurance. Abram's response is a model of trust, for his belief is credited as righteousness. This moment is more than a personal promise, it is the foundation of Israel's identity and mission. Through Abram's faith, we see the first steps of a divine plan that spans generations, connecting his story to ours. Abram believed the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Genesis 15 verse 6. This verse, central to Christian theology, reveals the power of faith. Abraham, even in the face of human impossibility, chose to trust in God's promise. His unshakable faith became an example for future generations, showing that trust in God is the foundation of true justice. The covenant with Abraham transcends a bilateral agreement. It is a pact of love and fidelity, in which God commits himself to Abraham's descendants, promising them land, protection and blessings. In return, he asks for obedience and faith. This covenant, sealed with a symbolic ritual, foreshadows the eternal covenant that God will establish with humanity through Jesus Christ. Abram's world was made up of nomadic tribes, wandering the arid lands between Mesopotamia and Canaan. Archaeological evidence, such as pottery fragments and ancient inscriptions, gives us a glimpse into the lives of these early people. The time period of Genesis 15 is set during the Middle Bronze Age, a time when city-states and tribal confederations dominated the landscape. Covenant-making customs, such as the slaughter of animals to seal a deal, were common practice. These artifacts and practices help us visualize the world in which Abram lived and the gravity of his encounter with God. Genesis 15 has been the focus of extensive biblical scholarship. The covenant narrative is seen as a pivotal moment in the biblical story, where God not only makes a promise but also formalizes it through ritual. Scholars have noted parallels between this covenant and other ancient Near Eastern treaties, where the slaughter of animals symbolized the seriousness of the agreement. The phrase, Abram believed the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness, Genesis 15 verse 6, has become a foundational text for understanding faith in the Jewish and Christian traditions, echoing Paul's New Testament writings. Scholars such as Kenneth Kitchen and Victor Hamilton have dedicated their careers to unraveling the mysteries of the biblical world. Through textual, historical, and archaeological analysis, they shed light on the culture, politics, and religion of Abraham's time, contextualizing the covenant within its time and place. Archaeology transports us into Abraham's world, revealing customs and practices that echo the biblical text. Discoveries from sites such as Ur and Mari in Mesopotamia have shown evidence of animal sacrifices and blood covenants, elements present in God's covenant with Abraham. Archaeological discoveries in the ancient cities of Ur and Haran, where Abram is believed to have lived, provide insights into his world. Excavations have uncovered clay tablets with contracts and covenants that mirror the agreements described in Genesis. One significant find is an 18th century BC tablet that describes a land grant, similar to God's promise of land to Abram. These discoveries provide historical context for the biblical narrative, showing that Abram's experience of covenant-making was rooted in the practices of his time, lending authenticity to the Genesis account. The promise of a land stretching from the river of Egypt to the great river Euphrates, Genesis 15 verse 18, reveals the geopolitical importance of the region at the time. Control of these lands was strategic, guaranteeing power and wealth. God's promise to Abraham therefore had political and economic implications, as well as spiritual ones. Cuneiform tablets found at sites such as Nuzi and Mari reveal legal and social customs similar to those described in Genesis, such as the adoption of servants as heirs in the absence of biological children, a practice that Abraham considered before the promise of a son to Sarah. The story of Abram's covenant with God speaks to us today, reminding us of the power of faith and trust in God's promises. Just as Abram faced uncertainty and doubt, we too encounter times when our faith is tested. Yet his story encourages us to hold on to our faith, even when fulfillment seems distant. In a world full of challenges, the covenant of Genesis 15 is a reminder that God's promises endure. Like Abraham, we are called to walk in faith, trusting that the same God who guided him will also guide us. The story of Abraham and his covenant with God transcends time and space. The promise of blessing and the importance of faith continue to inspire millions around the world. Like Abraham, we are invited to trust in God, even in the face of adversity, believing that He is faithful to fulfill His promises. The ancient texts that mention Abraham coincide with the era of the patriarchs, around 2000 BC, in Mesopotamia. Destroyed remains of cities such as Ur, from where Abraham departed, reveal advanced civilizations, with ziggurat structures and trade records, reflecting the cultural richness of the time. In a world marked by uncertainty and fear, the story of Abraham invites us to look to the starry sky and remember the divine promise. Just as God was faithful to Abraham, He is also faithful to us, His heirs in faith. May the story of Abraham inspire us to live with faith, hope and courage, seeking to fulfill the purpose that God has for each one of us. We must trust in God even in situations that do not make sense. Today we live anxiously about tomorrow. Now give your worries to God and never give up. If you liked this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel. And remember, each day is a new opportunity to call on the name of the Lord. Until next time.